Our next writer is Donna Pucciani. She's a Chicago-based poet, and she's published poems in the U.S., Europe, Australia, and Asia in such diverse journals as the International Poetry Review, The Pedestal, what is she? Chow? Did I pronounce that right? She Chow Poetry, Spoon River Poetry, Journal of the American Medical Association, and Christianity and Literature. Her work has been translated into Italian, Chinese, and Japanese. Her books include The Other Side of Thunder, Jumping Off the Train, Chasing the Saints, and To Sip Darjeeling at Dawn. A 3-time Pushcart nominee, she has won awards from the Illinois Arts Council, the National Federation of State Poetry Societies, and Poetry on the Lake. Donna.
One of my favorite subjects to write about is people, so I thought I would read tonight some people poems for you. And I would like to start with one that's dedicated to my husband, who has had 2 hip replacement surgeries in the last 3 years. It's called Arthritis. Your hips once held the seedlings of desire, cooled muscles joined to bone for running and for love. Never imagining they might fail, you kicked a ball on England's mud, chased subways in New York, and dodged the traffic of Chicago's loop. At night, the confidence of rhythm, the clenched rapture of holding, the breathless shifting, the energy of letting go, the deep sleep of innocence came as easily as sun warms the meadow. Days and nights became years before we even thought to check the time. When the winter of your limbs set in on a darkened X-ray, the bright stars of cartilage burnt out like the lights on last year's Christmas tree. Now you grind bone on bone as the universe prepares to make you and your old marrow superfluous. Face to face in the shuddering bed, we share the night's hurting, surrender to the betrayal of time, wondering for what ill deeds this punishment comes, meted out by whatever gods amuse themselves with human pain. As winter waves her dubious goodbye, slow and inaudible as the ache of drifting snow. The next poem is about my mother-in-law, Mary McGuire. Plump and fresh as a scone warm from the oven, Mary absorbs the identity of short pastry through the palms of her hands. Her doughy bosom rises like twin cupcakes, flowery and white beneath her tea-cloth dress covered in roses. She smells of butter and jam and clotted cream. The rolling pin, with its red-painted handles, becomes an extension of her pale English arms as, pie-eyed and smiling, she presses the unbaked crust to the counter, then crimps the edges on a glass plate, her hair the color of Pillsbury, her apron dusted with bleached wheat. 24 blackbirds flap overhead. Woman becomes biscuit. When I was a little girl, I spent several summers with my cousins down in New Orleans. And Pontchartrain Beach was a big amusement park overlooking Lake Pontchartrain of late hurricane fame. This poem is called Pontchartrain Beach. When I was 9, Aunt Betty piled us into the Buick and drove us unbelted to the lakefront, where Ferris wheels and roller coasters overlooked the levee and stared out to sea. Steam heated in pigtails and pedal pushers and red Keds, we rode the high-rise whiplash, and Cindy laughed so hard she wet her pants, and Aline's eyes grew big as the Creole moon, and I went back 3 times until, exhausted by adrenaline, screams, and neon, we all bumped home on sweaty leather seats, stopping only for root beer and sarsaparilla in frosted mugs, and fell asleep on cool sheets, dreaming of cotton candy in the dragonfly night. This next poem is about family in general and how we are all dropping off one by one. It's called Disappearance. How small we become in later years, our spines curving like the brittle shells of beetles, our hair like dried oak leaves, shredded and pale, as we abandon ourselves bit by bit. My mother shriveled in the grasp of cancer under flowered sheets, radiation bald, her hands plucking the blankets like birds' claws. Father followed, a gnome in a wheelchair rolling down death's hill, unstoppable as wind. You and I are familiar with tragedy. We'll soon be nodding and shaking in our own separate spheres, remembering our wedding in the university chapel more easily than what we ate for breakfast. Our sighs are visible as ghosts. We dream of the overnight flight to Paris, the morning train to Moscow, the sun on the Acropolis, and all the journeys for which there is no time. We huddle together as geese on the lake, frozen in gray iridescence, making a ragged circle with our feathered wings, clumped immobile in the encroaching ice. By the way, all these poems tonight are from my most recent book, To Sit Darjeeling at Dawn, which came out about 1.5 years ago. And I'd like to finish tonight with another poem about my husband, this one a little lighter, To My Husband Who Snores. The nights I have lain awake or been driven from the room by your guttural love songs are numberless as the miles we have traveled in midnight revels. Under siege, with no other option but suffocation under quilts or a cold sofa down a hall past a thermostat set for economy, I listen to your nocturne of grunts and snorts with no truffles to savor in the morning. Nothing can emulate your uvulaic gymnastics, a sink backing up, rush hour at the bus depot, elephants trumpeting when the circus comes to town. So last night, after 30 years in an insomniac haze, I decided zen-like to notice and move on. Seconds later, unable to become Buddha, my synthetic serenity ebbing in the tidal wave of your snuffles, never an even roar but the grind of constantly changing gears, and amazed at your ability to avoid death by choking, I chose to listen attentively, wrapping myself in your phlegmatic symphony, wallowing in your elegies to silent exhalation, immersed in your ocean of drool. Born on the auditory beer of 100 wild hogs on maneuvers in a swamp, I languished in the warm toss and turn of your mouthed breath, the tangled noises of your tongue up your nose, and thought of this dubious lullaby I would miss should you precede me in death. Finally, in the karma of conjugal desperation, I fell asleep, rocked by the chugging engine of your trackless train. Thank you.